We've never been to a Bears game.
No, first time.
First time?
We bought the tickets and I would have felt bad not coming, but you know, it's Christmas Eve. It's noon, you gotta go.
It was for like his birthday, but I bought him in September. So, and last Christmas it was like 48 degrees.
But I'm ready. We're here.
Just too cold. Hands and feet are just freezing.
Despite the layers.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It was fun to watch the game.
You can go to the Bears game, you can not go to the Bears game. It's always better to go to the Bears game.
I know I just said I don't have the highest regard for Chase Claypool at this point in his career, but with a full off season with the Bears, who knows what could happen. And then you also have Tyler Scott, who was a star. Still in the 4th round this year, who has some blazing speed that I could definitely see making an impact. Receiver isn't the only group though that's going to help out Justin Fields next year. Tight end is also a very important position, and I think the Bears have a pretty good group there. Firstly, you have Colt Kmet, who had a really good season last year, who's a guy that can be a great blocker and a great receiving threat at the same time. And then you also bring in Robert Tonyan to add to this group, who is another receiving threat for Justin Fields to work with. But what I think is really going to make the biggest difference is what they added on the offensive line. Firstly, Ron Poles goes out and drafts one of the best tackles in this draft class in Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. He's a guy that has all the tools to be a great tackle for a very long time in the NFL, and he had the production in college to go along with those tools. And then you also saw Nate Davis, who has been a solid guard for Tennessee throughout his entire career, especially in the run game with Derrick Henry running behind him. Adding these two guys to what you already had in Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, and Cody Whitehair, and your offensive line is starting to look a lot better. As far as the running back position goes though, you did lose David Montgomery this offseason, but I mean, if we're being completely honest, the dude had 800 rushing yards last year and barely averaged 4 yards per carry. I think he's fine as a player, but I do like Khalil Herbert a little bit more. And to add on top of Khalil Herbert, you also signed Travis Homer and Deonta Foreman. You could also argue that Deonta Foreman and Travis Homer are better backs than David Montgomery, so I'm not that worried about the loss of Montgomery. And then in the draft, you get another guy who would have had a lot more hype if the best running back since Saquon wasn't in front of him, and Roschon Johnson. There were a few reports that came out saying that Roschon could be a day one starter for the Bears. And I'm not sure how true that is, but if it is, it would not surprise me at all. The dude is a lot faster than people give him credit for, and on tape, he's constantly making people miss and breaking tackles. But no matter who ends up starting, the fact that the Bears' running back room is this deep shows me that the Bears are going to try to run the ball a lot, which should take a lot of pressure off Justin Fields and get those linebackers on defense to come down so Fields has some bigger windows to throw into. The offense isn't the only thing that helps out a quarterback though. The defense might not help a quarterback's performance directly, but it definitely plays a huge part in whether you win or lose a game. And man, Ron Poles made so many additions to this defense that if I talked about them all, this video would be an hour long. I might not want to talk about all the moves he made, but I do want to talk about some of the bigger moves he made that are going to make a huge impact. To start, Ron Poles added Tremaine Edmunds, who has consistently been one of the greatest linebackers in the NFL for his entire career. And then to add on to Tremaine Edmunds, he also added TJ Edwards, who was one of the better players on that great Eagles defense last season. So those two guys alone instantly make your linebacker room insanely talented. In the draft though, you also got Noah Sewell in the 5th round, who has a ton of upside and could easily grind his way into getting a lot of snaps next season. So these 3 additions to the front 7 are starting to make the front 7 look completely different. The safety room, though, was already really likable with Jaquan Brisker and Eddie Jackson, who have both proved themselves to be solid players at this point in their career. At corner though, the Bears were a little weak, so they did add Tyreek Stevenson in the 2nd round of Miami, who is a lengthy upside guy who could work his way into the starting position. And then in the 5th round, the Bears also took Terrell Smith out of Minnesota, who is an older prospect and he's gonna need some work. but he has all the tools you want in a good corner. So that's the biggest things they did in the linebacker room and in the secondary, but the defensive line was pretty weak too, and it needed some work, and Ron Poles once again transformed this position group. Firstly, he added DeMarcus Walker, who is coming off a season high of 32 total pressures, so he should be a huge help to the Bears' pass rush. They also signed Andrew Billings and drafted Javon Dexter, who should both help shore up that big weakness they had on the end tier of the defensive line. This was desperately needed because number one, they didn't have the greatest pass rush last season, but it also fixed the bigger problem, which was stopping the run. So adding these three guys to what they already added in the linebacker room should make this front seven tremendously better. Overall though, man, Ron Poles has done everything in his ability to make this a team that you can't just look past on your schedule as someone you don't have to prepare for. He's done a great job at controlling everything he can control. But what he can't control is how Justin Fields develops as a passer, and I think that's still a question mark that needs to be answered. If Justin Fields does take that step forward as a passer, I think we could see the Bears sneak into the playoffs, but if he doesn't, the Bears are in a world of trouble. And that's it from today's video. Let us know what do you think about Chicago Bear. And in the meantime, like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss our next uploaded video. See you in the next video. Do you know the Chicago Bears are coming off a 3-14 season which finished as the worst record in the NFL? But there were actually a lot of good takeaways from last season, especially when you consider that 7 of their 14 losses came in one-score games. Sometimes being the worst team in the league and getting the first overall pick is something a franchise has to go through to help speed up the rebuilding process. A great example of this is the Cincinnati Bengals. They were really bad back-to-back seasons, but it's what allowed them to get Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, which are now the biggest parts of their team, and they've had a lot of success because of it. And if I'm being completely honest with you, I think the same thing happened to the Bears, except they had a lot more cap space to work with, and giving a lot of cap space and great draft picks to Ron Poles has shown to be a pretty good decision. This offseason, Ron Poles has been absolutely cooking, and he has turned the Bears roster from looking like a bottom 5 team to a team could potentially make the playoffs. In this video, I want to talk about some of the Bears additions they've made this offseason and what realistically can be expected from them going into the 2023 season. But before we get a little further, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss our next uploaded video. Let's head back to the video. The biggest question mark or concern for the Bears heading into the 2023 season is the quarterback position. No matter what you add in the offseason, you have to have a capable quarterback to be successful, and I don't think we've necessarily seen enough from Justin Fields to say for certain what the Bears actually have in him as a player. I think he has the tools and the upside to be at the level of an elite quarterback like Lamar Jackson. We just haven't seen it yet. I wouldn't say upside of Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen just because of the arm strength, but I really do think he could be a top quarterback in the entire NFL. At the minimum though, you're getting at least a phenomenal runner that can change a game in one play with a simple scramble or just a regular read option. Last season, we really saw that rusher break out of him, and it's what kept the Bears in so many close games. I mean, he was the only reason for why the Bears had the #1 rushing attack last year. Even though he was that great of a runner, he still lost 14 games, and while I think you can definitely put some of the blame on the defense, some of the blame has to go on the Bears' passing attack. Last season, Justin Fields averaged less than 150 passing yards per game, with his touchdown to interception ratio being 17-11. I mean, these stats aren't just absolutely terrible, but they're definitely not the level they need to be at if the Bears want to make a deep run in the playoffs in the coming years. He had a mediocre O-line that allowed the 4th most sacks last season with 58. Some of these sacks can be credited as Justin Fields' fault, as sometimes he would run himself into pressure, but 58 sacks is 58 sacks, with his biggest threat being Darnell Mooney. I mean, they did add Chase Claypool mid-season for a second-round pick, but I'm honestly not the biggest fan of that trade. He has all the tools to be great, but he hasn't shown much greatness yet, and he's heading into his 5th season. I think the lack of weapons, though, has led Justin Fields feeling like he has to carry the Bears, which is why you see him panicking in the pocket, ultimately leaving the pocket to take off and run. I don't think he's had much trust in his receivers, which I honestly can't blame him for. But I think Ryan Poles has done a really good job at trying to get Justin Fields in the best situation possible with all the additions they've made. The addition of DJ Moore gives the Bears a true number 1 receiver that Justin Fields should be able to rely on. I also do really like what they have in Darnell Mooney as a player. I just didn't like him as much when he had to be the number 1 guy. And then after those 2 guys, you have an array of guys that could potentially make a solid impact.